Hey guys, welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Thanks for joining me. Let's do a get ready with me video. I threatened to do it a long time ago, but it's finally here. I wanted to create a video to talk about the questions that you guys asked me. I put together a Q&A list on my community tab and wanted to see what questions you guys had for me, and I wanted to answer them. So we're gonna get ready. We're gonna talk astrology. I'm gonna answer all of your guys' personal questions. Frank, come here. We're gonna get ready. We're gonna talk all things astrology. We're gonna do some makeup. We're gonna say goodbye to Frank because he stinks. You guys had really great questions, and so I decided to take probably about a handful of them and answer them as I get ready. So if you don't know me, I am Candice. It's nice to meet you. I'm a Western astrologer with a focus working both with the Sabian symbols as well as tarot to understand what's going on in the cosmos. Recently, I had a new moon on my North Node in the 5th house, and I was like, hey, I want to create more personal, kind of creative content. So I decided to kind of switch up my location a little bit, which I'll tell you about in a second, and bring you guys some of my answers while I get ready. You'll see them kind of pop up below me right down here somewhere as I answer these questions. I've broken them down into several different groups, and you guys asked like some really funny stuff, so I will be constantly looking at the screen, seeing what we got going on with those questions. So my North Node's in the 5th house. It's in Aquarius. We just had a new moon there, and I was like, I want to create more personalized content. I want to maybe try to be a little funny, and also talk to you guys a little bit about me, because I don't really do like introductory videos. Like, you know, sometimes you'll see those on like a YouTube channel or on like an Instagram where somebody's like, it's been a while since I've introduced myself. I've never really introduced myself. I mean, I do at the beginning of the videos, but I don't necessarily like feel the need to do that every so often. And if you guys follow my Instagram, it's pretty much just all memes. Anyway, I'm most active on, probably more so on X. So if you guys haven't already followed me on X, you can, or you can follow me for really funny spiritual memes on Instagram. All my handles are below in the description. Anyway, so this is kind of like a combination of a get ready with me video, along with answering your guys' questions. There's been a lot of questions people always ask me, like asking me about makeup. Okay, so full disclosure, Libra rising. I have Sun in Scorpio in the 2nd house and an Aries moon. So it's kind of funny. I was talking about this location. So everybody, I'm sure you guys have like a house in your home growing up as a kid, or like you have like a relative that has like the white room. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? It's like the room that looks nice that nobody sits in and nobody eats in. Whether it's like a dining area or it's a living room, you don't use it. That's kind of how I feel about my master bathroom. So recently my husband and I moved. We actually moved to a small town outside of Austin. We moved into a bigger space. Truth be told, I am like a makeup like junkie. Like I am like a makeup hoarder. I love cosmetics. I love skincare routine. I love all that stuff. So we kind of had a deal that was like the master bathroom is our bathroom, but I have my own bathroom for when I get ready. I know, first world problems. But because I have so much stuff for my skin routine, for my makeup, all that stuff, I just keep everything in there. So filming this right now, I kind of feel like I'm in the white room, like I'm not supposed to be in here. I feel like I'm doing something wrong. Anyways, so on with the story. So this is basically my white room, and I don't really do much in here other than just like shower and get ready. Otherwise, most of my videos, I call it the hole, are in the other bathroom where I have no windows. But I was thinking about getting a vanity when I moved in, and then I decided against it because I was like, it's just more stuff I'm gonna have to move eventually when we do move again, because we're still looking for our forever home. I was like, I'll just change the lighting in this bathroom and this will do. So I call that the hole. So I'll talk to you guys a little bit about, obviously, answering my questions as I do this. But a lot of people have asked me about my skincare routine, my makeup routine. It's not all that interesting, I promise you that. However, if you're curious about the products that I use, go to the links in the description below. It says book list. It'll take you to my Amazon page. I show all of like my facial stuff, and I also show all of my makeup stuff, at least the stuff that I can link through Amazon. How do I know I'm becoming an old lady? Hi, hello. I use the steamer. I just got this recently. It's amazing. It can heat up towels, steam your face, and it's a humidifier. But this is how I've been starting my days, and I have become super, I don't know, I wouldn't say frugal, but I'm somebody who really likes getting facials, but I can't justify like getting a facial every month. Like that's kind of crazy, right? And I like taking care of my skin. So I kind of crunched the numbers, did the math. I was like, for what I'm spending getting a facial, I can get this stuff and just do it myself. So obviously if you get one regularly, like there's no shame in that, but I love this thing because it opens up all of my pores. So sometimes I'll do it at night, but I like to start doing it in the morning before I do my makeup. And it really just, I feel like it holds everything a little bit better, and it kind of warms my face up as well. Can you see it? Probably shaking it around too much. It's like, stop moving me. Anyway, this is what I like to use. And I'll talk to you guys about it when I talk about my Chiron moon transit. But I have horrible, horrible migraines and like sinus issues, especially when the weather changes. So like now we're here in Texas, so when it goes from like being, oh, I don't know, 30 degrees to 80 degrees, like the same day, and then the humidity comes in and the dust kicks around, I get like really gnarly sinus issues. So I started steaming my face and incorporating herbs, and it's been so much better, but I'm still in the midst of my Chiron transit. Anyway, too long didn't listen. If you're interested in a humidifier and also a facial steamer, if you like just laying there when you get your facials and feeling this, awesome, because moisture keeps your skin from cracking, okay? All right, so that's usually what I do first. I'm really big on toners, anything that's natural. This is my go-to, my rose water by the Heritage Store. Big fan of Edgar Casey. He talks about this for its healing properties, and it's natural, so it's something really easy that you can kind of keep on your face. I put that on there probably like, honestly, like twice a day. I'm obsessed. Anyway, besides that, I feel like the key to having a really fresh looking face, obviously, is having a good skincare routine. I have a nighttime routine and a daytime routine, but recently I got turned on to Zine Obigati. Maybe you've seen this if you're somebody who frequents like the day spas and stuff. Tried some of the products, really liked it, and decided to get kind of like the daily box. I'm not trying to sell you guys anything. I'm not affiliated with them. I just have started using this recently and I really like it. Can be kind of pricey. So if you're somebody who's on a budget and you want to have really good products, but you don't want to spend a ton of money, I really recommend checking out The Ordinary. They have all kinds of amazing stuff to treat acne, aging, dryness, you name it. You can get it at Sephora, but you can also go to theordinary.com, I believe. And I, truth be told, I have like the entire line. I'm obsessed with their stuff to grow your lashes. And yeah, that's some of my favorite stuff. No, other than that, like once a week, I'll do a face mask. I do a scrub. Actually, the scrub that came with this whole line, I really liked. And I do like a light mask. You know, like I lay there and put like that robot mask on my face. So that's usually what I like to do. So I'm going to do this before we get going. A little bit about the questions that we're going to be doing today. So I kind of broke it down into several different groups. Okay, so we're going to do the questions that you guys have on my background about me as an astrologer or as a psychic, clairvoyant, tarot reader. And then I had a ton of questions about my relationship. Everybody's very curious about my relationship and my husband. So I will talk to you guys about that. You had some good questions. I had some people who asked questions also, a lot of stuff about Saturn return. So we're going to talk about that. Having a tough time, advice that I have on a tough time transits, and a few others that you guys had about my interests. So there's like a few grab bag things. So I just put the toner on. Now I'm just going in with the Daily Power Defense. This is what I like to use. And then this is for like redness treatment. Obviously your girl's, she's a little pink. And so this really helps kind of even everything out before I put anything else on. Okay. So now that that's set, we'll let that dry for a second. I'll get into a couple of your guys' questions. And we're going to start first with the questions that you guys have where you're asking me about my background. Let me put these over here so that way it doesn't look like I'm constantly looking behind me like I'm suspicious. Okay. So this is one of the first questions that I got in no particular order, but the Feral Writer asked, I would love to know how and where you studied astrology. Did you learn from teachers? Did you study from books? Where did you learn to the depth that you have? Awesome question. So, funny story. So my dad's family, I'm on my father's side, I'm half German, half Romanian. And my grandfather, my paternal grandfather's family is from Romania, okay? Like my great-grandmother was from Transylvania, literally lived in a wagon in the hills, escaped the war, and then went to Germany where she met my great-grandmother. Where she met my great-grandfather, and then they got married. So on my dad's side, we're half Romanian, half German. She was big into astrology, star books. She used to like trade spells and like readings for like chickens and goats and stuff, like real story. And so it's funny that I never really knew anything about this. Nobody ever told me anything about this. And when I was about 13 years old, had a major interest in astrology and astronomy. So I would hang out in the library section. I would read all of that stuff. It was something that really interested me. And that's really where my love started, until I could start actually collecting books and learning. And so astrology, 13, 14, followed also with tarot. Pretty much just self-studied up until the time that I was about 17 or 18. And then I started taking my first formal astrology classes. My background is primarily, it's Western astrology, but I would consider myself to be an evolutionary astrologer because that's the area that I am most interested in. Okay, so sorry. Old lady tendencies here. So this is also how you know you're getting old, when you need a magnifying mirror. I use this from my face before I put my makeup on. So my background is in mostly evolutionary. I went to do the program with Jeffrey Wolf Green's people through like the Pluto School. So if you're familiar with his work, he's one of the best. And I did his program. I also took some stuff through the London School of Astrology, and I consider myself to have 2 or 3 different astrology parents. Unfortunately, 2 of them have passed, but there's another one who I've been in kind of contact with throughout the years. His name is Stephen, and he is the best. He is a Leo rising, Scorpio sun, Venus in Capricorn, just like me. So we're really similar. But yeah, I've had, a lot of courses that I've done formally and informally. I've also learned horary. I did the horary course with Adam Ellenboss, and I kind of did that and kind of did it on my own because that's like a at a distance course. You guys are probably familiar with him. Funny story, sidebar. So, like I said in my video recently, like raise your hand if you're having weird dreams. I've had weird dreams all week. This morning I woke up after having a dream, and you guys will appreciate this because I told my husband and he's like, who's Adam? Adam Ellenboss, okay? So from Nightlight Astrology. So I had a dream last night that I was talking to him, which is weird because like we don't know each other. I had a dream that I was talking to him, and as he was talking to me, I noticed he had a glass eye. And I was like, what the hell is that? Like, I didn't want to like say anything, but I was like noticing it. And it wasn't just a regular glass eye. This was like an eye that was, it sounds weird, it was like a globe. And as he was talking to me, I could see like the globe like moving, and I almost wanted to be like, are you okay? But I didn't say anything. We just kept having this conversation, and then I woke up. Can somebody please tell me what this means? Would appreciate it. But yeah, so basically background in evolutionary astrology. I'm a Western astrologer. That is my area of practice. And also tarot. So I've been, reading for a while now. So I'm 34. I don't like saying that number, but I'm 34, and that's quite a long time for me to be reading. It's more than half of my life at this point. I'm putting on some primer. And what else? Yeah, that's pretty much it. So London School of Astrology, the Pluto School with Jeffrey Wolf Green. I've done horary with Adam, even though we don't formally know each other. And I feel like you never stop learning. Even when I teach tarot and astrology, I'm always telling my students and also my clients, like, you don't ever really get to a point where you're like, okay, I've learned enough. Like, I'm good. You know what I'm saying? All right. So that's the background on that. This I cannot plug into Amazon, but I will show it to you guys because for us ladies that are getting a little bit older, we want makeup that doesn't sit in our pores or in our creases. So I have been using the Saint, am I saying this right? You have to get this through their website, or you have to go through an artist to get matched, but this is really great stuff. Basically, you can pick your colors and then you get like a pack, and ooh, that's messy. And then you can do your makeup. So that's what I'm doing. I'm gonna start doing my makeup now. How did I learn? A lot of late nights reading. I feel like taking a lot of courses has been really helpful too. And I try to be good with like taking courses like every, 2 years. I can do some kind of continuing education. The last thing that I did was the horary. I'm kind of thinking in this next year, I'm going to do more maybe on like medical astrology. That's kind of what I'm feeling, because I've had more interest in medical astrology, like personally. So I feel like that would be something that's good to do. All right, so we're going to go to the next question. Omaye says, what's it like to be clairvoyant? I've been wanting a reading from you since I found you on Lada's channel. Your gifts intrigue me, especially with you being a death doula. Do you still assist in that way? Good question. What's it like being clairvoyant? It's kind of like the movie Ghost. Just kidding, no. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it is, I'm not sure. Hold on, I'm trying to find the right brush here. I mean, what is it like? Constant deja vu, that's for sure. It also kind of is like, imagine having like this superpower, but you can't like use it on yourself, right? Like when I have clairvoyant stuff that happens for me, it's random stuff that doesn't matter. Like, oh, something's gonna fall off of like a shelf and break. And like, as it's happening, I'm like, that's gonna break. I know it's gonna break, and then it does. It's not like the lottery numbers or anything like that. Probably the most useful thing that's kind of come up for me, and I don't even like saying useful, but I have Sun, Mercury, Pluto in conjunction natally. So it's pretty common for me to have like premonitions about death. Like I don't like saying that, but that's generally kind of what happens. So when, generally, I mean, at least the last like 15 years or so, like when somebody is kind of like on their way out or they're not doing well within my family, like I'll have a dream about it. Like I will literally see that it's coming. And I usually will tell my family like, hey, so-and-so I don't think is doing so well. We need to be mindful, and keep an eye on them or stay in contact with them. And usually I'll have very specific like dreams. Like for example, so I had an uncle on my mom's side, his name was Dave, and he passed actually a couple years ago during my Saturn's return. And I had a dream before he passed that my younger sister called me, and she was like, hey, Mom and I are gonna go and see Dave. He lived in Wisconsin at the time. And she was like, we need to go out there, but it's really cold and I need to borrow a heavy jacket. Do you have a heavy jacket? And I was like, what's going on? And she's like, Dave's sick. And then I saw in the dream that he ended up passing away. So 3 or 4 months later, my sister calls me and she says, hey, what's up? And I'm like, what's going on? And she's like, yeah, I'm going to visit Dave. It's really cold in Wisconsin. Like, do you have a heavy jacket that I can borrow? And I was like, what's going on? And I like freaked out. And she was like, yeah, like, he's not doing well. He's sick. Like, we're going to go out there. And I was like, you need to go now. Like, you need to leave now. And my mom left that day, got to Wisconsin, got to see him. He was having issues swallowing. He was like really sick, like had lost a lot of weight, and they took him to the hospital and they, like ran all the tests and did everything. And then they found out that he had like stage 4 throat cancer. I'm not even kidding you. He died 3 days later. So moral of the story is when I have these visions, when I have these dreams, I always tell my family, I'm like, hey, I think it's better to be safe than sorry. Like this seems like something. And so I had that with, oh my goodness, my dog, my uncle, my grandmother, my grandfather, and my other grandfather. So there's been like 5 people over like the last 10 years. So yeah, it can be kind of stressful sometimes because obviously in your own life, like as a general rule of thumb, we don't really see stuff for ourselves. We will definitely see some things, but not everything, if that makes sense. What is it like doing it for other people? I love it. I love being able to tell other people, you know, things that I see coming. I love being able to inspire them to connect with their own, you know, higher energy, their higher selves. I love being able to like relay messages that do not make sense in the moment. But then I'll get an email like several months later and they're like, hey, remember you said I was gonna like move to St. Louis, or you asked me who like, you know, like, I don't know, like Kyle was, and I'm like, yeah. They're like, yeah, I just got offered a job in St. Louis, or like I met this guy and his name's Kyle and I think that it's like the one, you know, like crazy stuff like that. Things that you just pull out of midair and you're like, okay, I'm not crazy. That's what I like about doing the clairvoyant readings. Yeah, years ago I became a death midwife. I went through a whole program for a year through Sacred Crossings in Los Angeles, and really wanted to work with people who are terminally ill and dying, because I felt like that would be really important for me as like a way of doing more when it comes to working with people who are in need of counseling, who are going through, you know, personal crisis or transitions, whether it's them or their own family. So I've been doing that for a while, and to be honest with you, I have not been doing that in recent years, primarily because I moved away from LA. So I lived in LA for quite some time, from, I don't know, 2004, since 2004. So 2004 to 2020, I lived in LA, and then ended up moving. And not that I can't continue to keep doing that, because I have had opportunities to do it. It's just between building my practice and seeing clients full time, and also I've been like teaching, I haven't had time to do it. But really what I wanted to do with that, beyond just the counseling skills, is I really wanted to be able to create a nonprofit where I could do living funerals for people, or especially children who are terminally ill. So my goal was to learn more about nonprofits, you know, kind of get one situated, get one started. So I could start a nonprofit where I could help children or people who are terminally ill actually have a living funeral. So if you're not familiar with that is, basically for people who don't want to have people standing around them, crying, you know, globbing onto them, being in the room, you know, overwhelming them maybe with the whole process of transitioning. It's a beautiful way to be like, look, I want to do this on my own terms. I'd like to be able to have like a funeral where I can be alive and be there and hear all of my friends and my family, you know, say all of the beautiful things that they want to say to me while I'm still alive and here. And everybody brings flowers and they celebrate your life, and you get to spend time with people. So that way, when the time comes for you to go, you can do it on your own terms and you don't have to feel like there's too many people around. And so, you know, with so many people that I saw who transitioned, I found that it was really hard sometimes for people to do that when there's family in the room, right? And I found that, you know, they were too emotional, too scared, too overwhelmed. Maybe they felt energetically like people were kind of like holding on to them. Does that make sense? Anyway, so I thought that would be a good idea, and that's still something I very much want to do. So if anybody has any information on like nonprofit stuff, how to get started, how to do that, I would very much appreciate those resources, because I would love to be able to kind of get that going over the next couple of years. All right, so May Lazine said, how long did it take for you to fully grasp tarot? I've been practicing for over a year now, and I want to be as good as you one day. What's tarot? Just kidding. Here's the thing, right? So I think I'm still always learning tarot, and I'm not just like saying that, like that's true. I kind of feel like every time I look at tarot cards, like I see something different. You know what I'm saying? And I'm the type of person, like I have a ton of decks. I probably have like somewhere upwards of like, I don't know, maybe 60 decks or something. But I have only about maybe 5 that I work with regularly, right? Because certain decks speak to me, and there's other ones that I have that I'll keep that I like. There we go. There we go. Flip this around. There's other ones that I have that I like, but I only work with certain ones. Sorry guys, can you tell it's hard for me to multitask? And I would say it took me maybe about 3 years to get confident with being able to pull cards and kind of put things together. I kind of feel like I read cards like I would read like a storyline, you know, like if you were to put like a bunch of storylines together or like images of scenes, kind of like how they like, I guess, prepare to like make movies, you know, they have all the scenes they put on the board and then they kind of put it in order and feel it out and all that stuff. I feel like that's how I read tarot, to be honest with you, because you have to be able to not just understand the one card, you have to understand how all the cards come together. And then you throw reversals into that mix, which a lot of people have strong feelings about. What are your guys' feelings on reversals? I'd love to know. The reason I ask is because on my lives, I don't usually read reversals. I don't. I'll read reversals when I'm doing like my one-on-one sessions with people, when I'm really going in depth. One of my favorite tarot teachers, his name was Peter. Okay. He, unfortunately, he passed. And he always used to tell me, he would say, you know, paintings, even if they're upside down, is still of the same image. And he would always tell me, I don't believe in reversals. He's like, it doesn't matter if it's upside down or right side up. He goes, it's the same thing. And I was like, okay. But then I kind of found that the more that I added reversals to my own readings, there had so much more depth to them. So personally, I'm a fan of reading reversals. I don't always do it for my lives, but I can in my one-on-one sessions. Should I start reading reversals on my live readings? What do you guys think? And I guess, yeah, about 2 or 3 years. But, you know, to this day, I will always still keep like a tarot reference book, you know, always. Because I kind of feel like you have to. Like, what if you're sitting there and you're like, this reading isn't making sense, or you're drawing a blank in some descriptive words, or you kind of feel like you need like more context. Like sometimes people will ask some really specific questions, like how long, what season, how many days, you know, or what signs do I need to look for? Getting a little toasty up here in the forehead, sorry. So I think it's important to not focus on how long it takes. Focus on accuracy and clarity, you know? And you can see a lot from as simple as just 3 cards. You don't have to have this crazy, constantly spitting out like cards like a fax machine type of reading. I mean, when I first started reading, when I would do the Celtic cross spread, sometimes I would do the reading and I would leave it on a table, literally for like a week. And I would keep coming back to it and being like, okay, what am I not seeing here? You know, like, and I would come back days later and I would see stuff. I would see things that I didn't see before, which I feel like people don't do anymore. People are so quick to just be like, okay, let's just do the reading and get it over and get it done with. But like leaving a tarot spread out, you know, for a couple of days, as annoying as it may be, especially if you live in a smaller space, can be an excellent way to really get a solid read and give yourself time to come back and, like I said, see things that you don't always see. So hopefully that gives you your answer. Okay, so we're going to move on to questions that people have about my relationship, which is like always like so funny and so weird that people want to know that. But, you know, when you're on the internet, people want to know about your life, I guess. Okay, so I'm probably going to answer all of these in all 3 of these in like one swoop. So bear with me. So on my relationship, I've got Kimberly, and Adriana and Astrid and Chunky Soul. You guys all asked questions about my relationship. So basically, let's read this one. So Kimberly said, I'd like to see how you personally overcome bad aspects or transits in your own chart. I'll talk about that. Tell us when or how you met your husband by using your chart. One thing I love the most is seeing astrologers on YouTube showing their own personal journey that can coincide with their natal chart. Gotcha. Adriana said, I'd love to hear about how you met your husband and what was going on with your synastry at the time. And then Astrid said, I'd love to learn more about your transition to being a full-time content creator, working with your husband. One day I want to work with my husband and build a business together. Any advice would be so helpful. Thank you and much love. And then Chunky Soul said, how does your husband feel about your work? Does he believe in astrology and connecting the dots with events? I would love to know his sun, moon, rising, and what he looks like. topic. Okay, so first things first, my husband's a fox. He's a fox. He's super hot. And I feel like I have felt like that for a very long time. And I'm a very, very lucky lady. So full disclosure, I'm an Aries moon, Scorpio sun, Libra rising. My husband is a Scorpio rising, Taurus sun, Cancer moon. Maybe I'll show you this in history. I'll add that picture somewhere so you guys can see it later. Somebody else was also asking about my wedding chart, so maybe I'll show that to you too. We'll see. So on meeting my husband and the transits, oh Lord, a long time ago. It was a long time ago. So the story is kind of like, it's kind of messy. It's kind of messy, but okay, I'll tell you anyway. So it was 2012, I want to say, 2012 maybe. 12 or 13, I don't remember. But yeah, my husband and I, we met on a dating app a very long time ago when I was much younger. I was like 22, 23. And I was living in Los Angeles, and it wasn't like a real thing. Okay, as much as I hate to say that, it wasn't like a thing. We met on a dating app. We all met at a bar. I brought 2 of my friends. He brought 2 of his friends. We hung out. That was that. We were kind of, I always laugh. I'm like, it wasn't a one-night stand. It was like a 1-month drag. You know, I hate saying that. That's kind of what it was. I was young and it was a mess. So that went on for maybe a month or 2 or 3. We kind of hung out for a while. I lived in the valley. I was a valley girl. And he lived over by Marina. If you guys know LA at all, or closer, I think, to Palms. Anyway, dated a little bit, stopped dating for a little bit. Somebody was super, super salty about it. And yeah, that was pretty much it. I kind of got the impression that he was like either not interested or like there was like somebody else around. And then he started texting me when I started seeing somebody else. He doesn't know this. I started seeing somebody else and he was still texting me and I was like, what do you want? And he was telling me that he was moving and I was like, okay. I don't care. And I definitely cared, but he was moving out of state and I was really upset about it, but I had too much ego to tell him that I cared and didn't see him. Didn't talk to him for what was about to be 8 years. Yeah, about 8 years. So we didn't talk again until like 2020. So fast forward, okay? He was in a relationship for a very long time, for like 6-7 years or whatever. I was in a relationship with somebody for almost 4. If you guys watched some of my stuff in 2020, you know that I like went through a huge Saturn return glow up, which I'll get to. And basically was with somebody for like 4 years and realized like this wasn't working. And he kind of got shitty with me around my 30th birthday and I had a total meltdown. Could not handle it. I had Saturn on my Venus too. And was like, I'm fleeing the country. I'm leaving. And I decided to leave. So I went to the UK for like a month. I traveled a bit. I had fun, came back, got some perspective and was like, I should not be living in Los Angeles. So decided that I was going to move at the beginning of 2020, even pre-COVID. Was in the process of trying to move when, COVID set in. Real fun. And when that happened, I was like, you know what? Why do I feel like I am being delayed right now? What's going on? And what's funny actually is that my ex and I broke up in 2019, right around my birthday. And then he came back at the beginning of 2020. And then he was like, let's make it work. And I was like, I don't think you have it in you, bro. I don't, you're like 4 years old. What are you doing? Anyway, so we tried to make it work. We were going to move in together in 2020 in like March. And we were looking at signing a lease in Eagle Rock, if you know where that is. And I was like, in my soul, I was like, I know this is wrong. And I kept having dreams over and over and over, like January, February, March of 2020, that I was like getting ready in this other bathroom and I met this other man and like we were in love and we were like making out and like all this stuff. And I kept thinking to myself, I'm like, who is this man? Because this is not my boyfriend. And I couldn't figure out who it was. I was like, this is not him. I'm like, this is so bizarre. And he kept coming up in my dreams. And I had one vivid dream. I'm getting ready and he walks in. We're like getting ready to go somewhere. And he gave me a glass of wine, was like all affectionate. And then I woke up and I was like, what the hell? So my ex-boyfriend came back. We were trying to make it work. And I knew it was a bad idea. And I just kept telling the cosmos. I was like, send me a sign. Like, send me a sign. If I'm not supposed to be doing this, please send me a sign. Sure as shit, I'm going and sitting down to sign this lease, which I had no business signing. And this was in March. And I'm in the leasing office, and in the background, you hear on the news, they're like, yeah, they're closing the country down, and like there's this pandemic, and like and this was like literally like, this was like the third week of March, and I was like, there's my sign. And I like stood up and I thought about it, and I was like, I need like a week to think about this, and then like thought about that, and then thought about the dream, and I was like, I got in this relationship. So I did. That was in March of 2020. And then I went through a period in the spring where I was like, okay, I'm moving. I wasn't sure if I wanted to go to Northern California or if I wanted to go to Seattle, so I was going back and forth to both places, looking at somewhere to move, was thinking about like buying a condo, and long story short, your girl is in June or July, I don't know. I was in Northern California visiting a girlfriend. Was having a grand time. I'll just leave it at that. Partaking in some mushroom experiences. And out of the blue, I get a Facebook ad. Okay. And guess who it is? It's him. It's my now husband. So we started talking. I was like, what the hell do you want? You skipped town like 8 years ago. Like, why are you back? And he's like, oh, you look good. I was like, I know. Okay, I was like blonde. I had just also lost like 50 pounds at the time. So, you know, we were like talking, whatever. We went back and forth for a bit. He was like, come visit me. And I was like, you're bad news. I was like, I know you're bad news because I know you. And our little tete-a-tete that we had a while back, I would never admit it. Oh, there we go, screwing up my eye makeup. I would never admit it, but I'm like, kind of broke my heart. I mean, I cried about it for like a year. My sister is such a little brat. She told my husband that too. I think she told my dad and told my husband that I cried about it. And in all fairness, it was not like a regular cry on a regular basis. It'd be like, I have a couple glasses of wine and be like, he was the best I ever had. Even though after that, I was like, no more tours. No more tours. Anyway, so I'm going on a tangent. Long story short, we reconnected. We went back and forth on Messenger for a little bit. We talked. He wanted to hang out. I said no. He came to visit that summer. I was like, I'm still moving. This is a bad idea. I don't think we should do this. And then obviously we know how that kind of went because I ended up moving at the end of 2020 in with him in Vegas. So I moved to Vegas. We were together for a year. We got engaged. I proposed to him. And then a couple months later, he proposed to me. And then in the fall of 2021, on November 13th, 2021, we got married. So it's like super crazy. But what's really weird is two things. One is that I always like hoped it was going to be him. Was always in love with him. He's like drop dead gorgeous. He's so perfect. And what's funny is that I remember, I actually saw a Facebook post from like a long time ago that I was like, dear universe, please send me a Scorpio rising, Taurus sun, Cancer moon, because I had like crunched the calculations and I was like, that's my perfect match. We drive each other crazy, but we love each other. What else? So 2 is, do you guys know who KRS is? The Vedic astrologer. You know who I'm talking about? I'm gonna put my eyelashes on. The Vedic astrologer KRS, so he did a reading for me a long time ago. And he had told me, he was like, it's either going to be summer of 21 or spring of 24, which is like coming up. I should tell him that. I should be like, watch out, there's another one coming. That's why you have to refer to them as your first husband, right? So they know that they're replaceable. Just kidding, I'm totally just kidding. He had said, yeah, it'll be one of these 2 times. And he told me, he said, when you meet your husband, you'll know. Because he said, you're going to see a horse that's a mutated figure. And I was like, what? Like a centaur, right? Kind of like Sag. And I was like what? He goes, I don't know. It'll be like a chess piece or something. So the day actually that I connected with my husband, so imagine I'm like going around for 3 years being like, where am I going to see a half horse? Like I need to find this half horse and I'll know that that's where my husband is. It was like psychotic. Anyway, so the day that he reached out to me, I was actually in Northern California and I got into town with my little tote bag and my baggy jeans, and I was just NorCaling it up, and tripped on a curb. Truth be told, tripped on a curb, getting out of a car. My stuff flies out of my bag everywhere, and I'm like, fuck. So I'm like picking all this stuff up. I look totally crazy, like this bag lady that's like picking up stuff off of the ground, throwing it into my purse, and I look up, and the shop that's in front of me, okay, the store that's in front of me, it's a chessboard shop. It's a chessboard shop. And random, right? Like who has a chessboard shop? Anyway, so there's this big stone figure, and I mean, it's like this tall. It's like almost as tall as me. That's of this knight, right? Like if you guys play chess, you know what I'm talking about. And it was right in front of me, and I was like, today's the day. Like I knew, you know? And then hours later, I get this message from him, and I'm like, is this a joke? Like, is the universe like fucking with me right now? Because it was like the person that I was always in love with, you know? And I gave him a hard time when he came back. But yeah, best story ever. Don't tell a lot of people like what happened, because like I said, it was messy. We were both coming out of like relationships. But sometimes, I mean, you can be with somebody for 5, 6, 7 years and you're just like, nope. And then the right person comes along and you're like, yeah, okay, sure, let's do this thing. So, I mean, it was like we moved in within 6 months. Within a year and a half, we got married. And so in November of this year, we've been together for 3 years. Okay, so that's like the background on that. So you know how we met. We met 2 times. And fun fact, in his chart, he has Venus, which rules his 7th house because he's a Scorpio rising. So Venus is in Aries, and it's in his 5th house. He had to meet me at a bar. He did. But my 7th house ruler is Mars. And I have Mars in my 2nd house. And I have Mars at 4 degrees of Scorpio. Yeah, Mars at 4 degrees of Scorpio in the 2nd house. He had to physically come to my house, which was interesting because he was like, oh, I'll come see you. And I was like, no. And he's like, I'll come see you. I'm like, no. And then he came to see me. So I don't know, maybe there had to be 2 meetings, or I don't know. All right, trying to focus.
Are both mics on?
What do you mean are both mics on?
Is that on?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, sorry.
You just f***ed up my eyelash. You have to leave this in the video.
What?
You said you're gonna have to leave this in the video
No.
now. Yeah, you are. Because I was like mid-sentence. Okay, so here we go. So the eyelash is on. Had a minor inconvenience. Hubs came in and was like, did you mess up the mic? I'm like, no, it's not my first rodeo. Hello. All right, anyways. Okay, so somebody asked, would love to know about your transition into becoming a full-time content creator. Basically, I, truth be told, never really fully wanted to be on YouTube. That was never my interest. Never had an interest in that. I've been just seeing clients privately for years, and I've been doing that since like 2013. And the path to becoming a full-time content creator was more, COVID. And I was like, well, now I can do all of my sessions like, full-time, like long distance. So why not? And that's going to give me more time if I want to create continuing education content. So for me, it was more courses, classes, things like that. But if you guys know me from my Lotta days, I worked for Astrology for, I think like a year or so, for like, it was a while ago. I think it was like 2012, 2013, maybe. So I started working with Lotta, did some videos, never really wanted to fully do it by myself, did some stuff with a couple other people. I've done a lot of interviews and stuff. And worked with Mike, the Peace Dealer. We did our podcast in Vegas. Really, for me, I think it was when I moved to Vegas because, Mike was there and we were friends. I was like saying to him at my birthday party, actually in 2020. So we had a fun little get together. I invited a bunch of people from LA. We had my birthday and I was talking to Mike in the parking lot. And this was November of 2020. I was like, look, I'm moving to Vegas. I was like, I would like to create fun content that's astrologically oriented. This was literally the conversation we had. And I said to him, I was like, the world's a weird place right now. It's very divided. I said, you have a lot of tension between genders, between cultures, between ethnicities and politics. I said, everybody is so divided and nobody knows how to just sit and have a conversation anymore. And I said to him, look, you're, super conservative. I was like, you're very like pro, conservative. I mean, at the time he was like a Trump supporter. And I was like, and you're black and you're a man. And I was like, and I'm a little bit more liberal and I'm kind of mouthy. And obviously I'm pretty white. And I think that we can sit down and talk about astrology, which can unify a lot of our audience and come from two different backgrounds, but learn to have a conversation and agree about what's going on in the cosmos and also in the collective. And I was like, I think this will be a good idea because it's going to teach people that we can be different, but that we can still have a lot of common ground, okay? I'm not making this a race thing, so please don't make it a race thing, but I really felt like it would be something that would be a good idea. So we started the podcast. We did it at the beginning of 2021. We stopped doing it because I moved, but I think we did 100 episodes. So we did it for 2 years straight, which was great. And the reason why I decided to do it actually wasn't just because I was in town and Mike was there, but I wanted to, hang out and do other things with other people. I didn't want to just focus on me. I hated the idea of just me being on camera. I'm more like the creative person, and I'm like, yeah, just you go do this. But I had to be involved in it. My husband's background actually was working with YouTubers. That's what he did. So he worked for like a big studio that sold to Disney, and he like helped create a bunch of YouTubers, and he would shoot them and create the content and do the special effects and the editing and like all this stuff. And so when I got together with my husband in 2020, I was like, let's do something. I was like, let's create a YouTube. And he's like, are you sure you want to do that? And I was like, no. But then we talked about it and I was like, it could be fun. I was like, it could be like a thing. And at the time he was working for the union. And so eventually it just kind of got to the point like, 2021, right around the time we were getting married. I mean, we were shooting 4 videos a week, plus we were doing the podcast, and he was running back and forth between there and his job. And I was just kind of like, why don't you quit your job? This is too much. And he's like, no, I don't think so. And, like obviously being an earth sign, he's like, and a man, like I want to have my own thing. I'm like, you do have your own thing. You're literally doing all of this for me and for Mike and for us. So I tried to sell him on the idea of being like, this can be something that we can build and we can do it together. And I was like, I teach classes. I have my one-on-one sessions with people, but I was like, I would love to have more webinars and I would love to be able to create products. I'm looking for my lipstick, sorry. And I kept telling him, I was like, there's so many things that I want to do, but I can't do it by myself. And if you want to build it with me, that would be great. We should do that. So somehow I convinced him to leave his 9-to-5 job to go and build this whimsical kind of business with me. How I did that, I don't know. And a lot of people were asking me if he's a believer. Let me go back to the questions. So that was the transition. Basically 2021, that's what we did. I do all the content, he does all the editing. He's the one who posts everything on the community tab. He maintains my website. He responds to emails. He sends you guys your courses. He is fully responsible for the growth of this YouTube channel. When we started, I had about 1,400 subscribers. And it wasn't really because I was even posting all that often. I would occasionally put out a video, but we started working together. He got me on a schedule. He helped me kind of create my flow and help me put everything together. He does all the thumbnails and everything. He's the one who's on all the lives. Like, he is Oz. So a lot of this would not be possible without him. I hope you end up building a business with your husband. Obviously, to work together, live together, and be married, you have to really like each other for that to happen. But I think I got really lucky with that. How does he feel about my work? He's obviously a skeptic, but I think in recent years he's really kind of come around and he's been open to the idea of like, readings and things that I tell him that are going to happen. And he's big into finance and trading and investments. So we'll talk about lunar cycles and how it affects charts and things like that. So he's into that. I think, he's open. I feel like he's definitely a lot more open than he used to be, where he was very skeptical. He's very much like, you have to prove it to him for him to believe. But like I got him to like do his new moon intentions recently with like the Chinese New Year and stuff, and he was kind of into that, which I think is cool. And does he believe in astrology and connecting the dots with current events? Yes, but he's also really quick to be like, well, not everything has happened, you know, or like this was right, but you don't talk about the things that were wrong, which is like kind of funny. Like he'll razz me about that. But he's definitely open to it. And I think he knows that there's enough of something going on, like there's something to it for this to be like a continual thing that's growing, right? All right. Anyway, I hope that's giving you guys all the questions you need. I know you asked questions about what he looks like. Go to my Instagram. You can click some stuff on my travels, and maybe I'll try to find a way to like post a picture or something. But if you go into my videos and you look at my videos on my channel from previous stuff, there's a video that I did about Bitcoin. And he and I filmed the whole video together. So he's on the video. You can go and see him. He's a fox for sure. All right. So this is questions about Saturn. So we have Phoebe. Phoebe Baby said, have you gone through your Saturn return and how was it? Are there lessons you can learn before the Saturn return to lessen the blow? And then Gaia said, I'd love to know what significant events you remember of your Saturn moments. For instance, Saturn opposed Saturn or your first Saturn return. If you have any preparation you might be thinking for your second Saturn opposition to your natal placement, if you haven't reached it, or any significant note and your second Saturn return. In which house does your natal Saturn sit and what is it ruled by? I'm in my second Saturn return, so it's on my mind. Okay, I'm very Saturnian. My chart is made up of 2 stelliums. I've got 4 planets that are in Scorpio in my second house, 4 planets that are in Capricorn in my 4th house. That's it. 7th house, Aries moon, and Jupiter in the 10th. So I'm like a Scorpio-corn. So I have Uranus at 2 degrees Capricorn, Venus at 6 degrees Capricorn, Saturn and Neptune at 10 degrees of Capricorn in my 4th house, in opposition to Jupiter in my 10th. So I have a very highly aspected Saturn. My Saturn is in Capricorn, so it's, you know, in its ruling sign, and it's at a 10, so it's a very Capricorn-like. My Saturn return, I kind of think about how, you know, I had my Saturn return reading with somebody who will not be named, but they are a well-known reader. And this is not me shaming them, by the way, because everybody's got their own style. But I kind of like regret not either getting another reading or really making sure that I found somebody that I felt like I resonated with very well. Like I should have done better research. It was on me. But when I got this reading, the reader was like, and this was like 8 months before my Saturn return, she was like, it's going to be really hard. You're going to be very lonely. You know, it'll be a difficult time. You'll have problems with your house. You'll have problems with your family. And, you know, you're just going to be very isolated and it's going to be very depressing. Like, this is literally what she told me. There was not like, this is how you work with it, or this is how to make the best of it, or this is how you get through. Like, I was like super depressed walking away from this reading. I was like, fuck. So basically, although a lot of those things are true, you know, Saturn in the 4th, making a home within yourself, issues with roommates or landlords or family, roots, ancestry, emotions, mother issues. Okay, yeah, all those things, they happened, right? And it was like kind of, I knew that was going to happen. But there was a lot of good that came out of my Saturn return. And, you know, when you're in it, it's like you can't really see the forest through the trees. You know what I'm saying? But when you come out of it, you start to look around and you're like, okay, that was a lot. You know, you kind of feel like you just got on a chopper and like escaped Vietnam. Like literally that's how I felt. But a lot of good things came of it. So I'll give you like the 60-second synopsis. Saturn goes into my 4th house. Literally to the week that happens, I return back home to my hometown. I'm from Tucson, Arizona, 520, to go and see my grandma, to go and visit her and spend Christmas, no joke, at her old folks' home, her center, where she was like very active. She was throwing parties. She had 2 boyfriends. She was playing cards. Like we were getting calls saying like maybe we need to move her out of assisted living because she didn't need assistance. And she was like a wild Pisces. God bless Betty. So we went to go and see her. And then, yeah, that was pretty much it. I went home, hung out with my family, came back. Saturn hit Uranus. I was restless. I really wanted to move. There was a lot of back and forth about my living situation. If I was going to keep my own space where I was living in actually Echo Park. And I was deciding whether or not I was going to move from there and move in with my boyfriend at the time or not, but we just couldn't get on well. Virgo sun, Virgo rising, Capricorn moon. So we couldn't figure that out. Finally got to the point where I was like, I don't want to live with you anyway. I'd rather have my own space. And then it was back and forth in and out of that whole relationship situation. My dad got really sick. He was in and out of the hospital and was having a lot of health problems at the time. So that was very stressful because I was obviously in LA and my dad was in, where was he? I want to say like Ontario? He was in Ontario. So it was like an hour drive. That's without traffic. Okay, so my dad was like an hour away, was in and out of the hospital, had like COPD, a bunch of health issues, was not well, and was like doing sometimes like a week stretch at a time in the hospital. And he was living with my younger sister at the time. And so I would like go there, try to make food for him, clean up his house, take care of him, make sure he had his medication, get on his case about the fact that he's still smoking. And that was pretty much the long and short of that. Okay, so we're moving on to hair now. If you guys are really looking for a good brush, I have like thick wildebeest hair, I really recommend getting a boar brush. Game changer. Okay, so we're gonna try to tame this. So yeah, so taking care of dad, dealing with on and off relationship. My home didn't change. I didn't have any roommates. I went into that situation knowing I didn't want roommates because of my potential Saturn return. I actually lived in that place for like 6 or 7 years by myself. I loved it. It was like a little like studio, like half house thing. It's like half the house was like my kitchen, living room, the other half was like my bedroom, and it had like big vaulted ceilings. And it was in Echo Park, so it was kind of sketch, but it was in a private area. It was like, there was 3 or 4 different houses on the property, and I was in the back, and I had a huge patio with like a waterfall, and there was like hummingbirds. It was like magical. I was so thankful to be there. Anyway, my husband calls it my shanty home. He's like, before you went to your forever home and I adopted you, and I was like, I don't need you. I was fine. I was living life. Anyway, so took care of dad. Dad went back and forth for a year. He ended up being fine. Thank God, he's good. Had a lot of drama with family. Obviously, my uncle passed. Problems with my mom. Probably the most memorable thing of my Saturn return, obviously, was Saturn conjunct Venus, and I had the breakup. But really, I think it was when Saturn hit Neptune, for whatever reason, like 1 week or so in LA, in 2018, 2019? Yeah, my Saturn return was right before we had like the shit show of 2020. So it was like 2018, 2019. Saturn hit my Neptune. This is real life. So the apartment or like the house that was next door to me, they were, I don't know if it like us, like my house was like at a lower, like, how do I say this? My house was like in a lower lot, okay? So like the actual ground was several feet higher. Like if I opened up my bathroom window in my old place, I could like see the yard next door, okay? So when it rained, there was like torrential rain that year. One of the weeks when Saturn was in conjunction to my natal Saturn Neptune. The water from the yard next door was like pouring down into my yard, and the foundation in my home was totally flooded. I mean, it was like crazy. So the house was flooded out of the blue, and I will never forget, I was sitting in my kitchen, I think I was working, and I had like a little like electric space heater on the floor, which is crazy. We don't need that in LA, but whatever. I was cold, and I had tile floors. So I had the space heater on, and all of a sudden, I start seeing water coming through the floorboards of my house. And I'm like, oh my God. And I was like stunned, and I didn't even put 2 and 2 together and realize, hi, idiot, space heater's on the floor, water's literally rushing into your house, your feet's on the floor. So I have Saturn, Neptune, Uranus conjunct. So I have a theory that I could have died that day. When I tell people that, they're like, you're so dramatic. I'm like, no, seriously, I could have died. Because Uranus is electricity. So that was fun. And then having to deal with being out of my house and having the house fixed, and then being deathly afraid of mold, and then eventually being like, I'm getting out of here. This is not a good situation. So that happened. So that was very memorable about my Saturn return. And then I felt like it was like a 1-2 punch. It was like I had all this stuff happen in 2018 and 2019. And then as I'm coming out of my Saturn return in 2020, I'm like, okay, my Saturn return's done. Except Saturn and Jupiter and Pluto were conjunct in my 4th house. And it was square my moon. And then it was like another year of just like crap. Anyway, ended up being the best thing. Home change, lots of changes with family. Definitely dealt with like issues with relationship with mom stuff because we had been estranged, but then we kind of connected a little bit that year and we like talked, and it's still weird. But I definitely felt better about it, and I understood more about the relationship that my mom had with her mom. And I kind of saw like Saturn being in my 4th house as like the generational curse breaker of being like, okay, I didn't do what like the other women in my family did. They like got married young and had kids and like didn't fix their relationships with their parents, and that continued. And so I didn't have to do that. So that was like a big thing for me. And then when the Saturn return was over, I had a new home. I lived with my husband. I got engaged. My business was growing. Like I had made a lot of changes. That year I lost like 50 pounds, like changed my hair, like looked like a completely different person. Like the before and after is like nuts. So for me, going into it, like I knew a lot of 4th house things or Venus related things or Neptune related things could happen. Some of them were textbook. I guess I kept visualizing, thinking about Saturn being like this old man that lived with me who was like kind of like Gandalf. Like in my mind, like Saturn is Gandalf. Does that sound stupid? I feel stupid saying that, but that's how I kind of thought of him, that he was like, thou shalt not pass, you know, and like wouldn't let certain people into my life or into my home because my home is symbolic of my heart. So if they're not supposed to be in my home, or I'm not supposed to be there, if my home is limiting me from getting out and doing the things I need to do, Saturn in the 4th, then those things were going to happen. I can remember when I had my Saturn opposition when I was like 14 to 17, and it was ironically like my first real quote-unquote job. And it was a lot of me like going to work at a bakery and baking bread, which I still love to do. And so it was it challenging? Sure, it was. But it was like, it taught me a lot about responsibility. So the Saturn, I feel like an opposition, in theory, an opposition should be harder than a conjunction. But my Saturn return almost took me down there for a minute. So all I can tell you is just, you know, a Saturn transit is what? Maybe at most a year, depending on the passes. But Saturn doesn't deny. He just delays, you know? So look at it as him wanting to help you develop better goals, higher standards, more responsibility. I mean, I see Saturn as like the place in your chart where you're quite insecure, you know? But it ends up being like the thing that you do best. So like now it's like, oh, I can do domestic things. I'm learning to do domestic things. But for me, it's been more home business, you know, because it's in the 4th house at a 10. And patience, you know. I would work with Saturn on Saturn days. I would open up my door and welcome Saturn in. I would do Saturn mudras when I would meditate. I would write the symbol of Saturn somewhere in the house on a board. And I work on Saturdays because of Saturn. That is my sacrifice. Is Saturday sessions for all of my clients that work 9 to 5. I got you. I will always have Saturday sessions for you. Anyway, I hope that that's helpful in giving you some insight into that. Okay, so questions on tough times. There seems to be some stuff going on in the cosmos. Obviously, the astrology this year is going to keep on keeping on. But I had Anya Array. She said, when you're going through a tough time, does it always reflect in your chart? Or do you sometimes just think, what the fuck, where is this coming from? Because I sometimes can't make sense of why so much is going wrong. Okay. Yes and no. I mean, I think I've gotten to a point where it's like, on one hand, I try to tell myself, like, it doesn't always have to play out literally. And when it doesn't, I laugh because I'm like, okay, I didn't see that one coming. You know, astrology can be literally, but sometimes it can be figurative. Like a Pluto transit doesn't always have to bring death. It can bring birth. or a Saturn transit doesn't have to bring a tough time. It can bring opportunity to grow up, or be more experienced. Like, yeah, it's not always literal, right? And so I'll laugh when it isn't literal and there's something that catches me off guard that I didn't see coming. Does that make sense? So when I'm going through it, I try not to look at my chart as much. I remember like a year or two ago, I was like, I'm gonna go a whole year without looking at my chart. That didn't last long. But even not looking at my chart, doing the astrology reports and like talking about the horoscopes and doing like the weekly, like I still know where stuff is. So I don't have to look at my chart to know that it's activating something. Does that make sense? So I would kind of like think about it and be like, oh, I know this is happening in my chart, or that eclipse is conjunct this, or it's squaring that, or like whatever. I will say, admittingly, I maybe look at my chart twice a month. I tried to be better about looking at my progress chart, because a couple years ago I kept getting COVID over and over and over, and I couldn't figure out why, other than the fact that I'm feral and I was going everywhere without a mask. And it was because I was having eclipses in my progress 6th house and I didn't realize it. So I do try to keep an eye on my progress chart now. Does it always reflect in my chart? 90% of the time, the stuff that is going on in my life, it is reflecting in my chart. And I think it's all about perspective and how you look at it, and trying to make, lemonade in situations. I think what I like about astrology is awareness is everything. So if you know that a difficult time is coming and you're, well versed on what the planet means or the transit means or the house, you know how to be prepared. You know that it's at least coming, so you can kind of tackle it head on rather than like letting life happen to you. Like sometimes I think about the fact that there are people out there that like know nothing about astrology and they're just out there just winging it, just doing life. They're winging it, which is like amazing, I think. Because astrology is not for everybody. A lot of people will say, well, it's not a science, it's a pseudoscience. Well, then it's a pretty damn good one. And it seems pretty accurate for me. So if that's what's going to help me cope with some of these situations in my life, I'm going to take what I can get and I'm going to work with it. Do you sometimes just think, what the fuck, where is this coming from? I will say I did recently, I underestimated Chiron square Chiron. Chiron going into my 7th house, okay, whatever, but like Chiron squaring my natal Chiron, I was like, what the hell is going on? Like, this sucks. And I'm still kind of in it right now. I have Chiron at 16 degrees of Cancer, and my moon is at 22 degrees of Aries. So I'll get into that in a second. But basically, if you're wondering like, where is it coming from, what's going on, some things I would recommend looking at is look into what your annual perfection is, find out what your Time Lord is, because that can be a really big piece of the puzzle. When there's certain transits going on involving your Time Lord, it can show you things that you would never like really super focus on. That's both that planet in transit and transits to your Time Lord in your natal chart, because eventually it's going to fulfill the promise of that house and the natal placement, right? So for example, people were asking me about like, I didn't answer this question, but people were asking me, well, when you met your husband, what was going on? Super easy. 30 years old, 7th house annual perfection year, which is about marriage. My moon's in my 7th house, which rules my 10th house. There was a Mars retrograde over my moon. And at the time I was like, this is gonna be horrible. Like, I'm gonna be getting in fights with people and it's gonna be like all this crazy stuff. And like, I'm gonna have some issues with a woman. Come to find out, ended up being my husband, because Mars rules my 7th house of marriage, went over my moon, 10th house. He was trying to get me to move in with him. It was this karmic connection. We reconnected at that time, right? So actually it was the best time ever. And it was during a retrograde in my 7th house. So it didn't need to be terrible. It was just somebody who was just kind of like hot and heavy, Mars tings. So look at your annual perfection and your Time Lord. Also, do not discriminate outer planets. You have to look at eclipses and know that eclipses unfold over time. So you can have an eclipse that maybe doesn't do anything that particular day, but it'll get activated down the road when other planets cross or square that degree. Look at your progress chart. That will tell you some things that you're like, I don't even understand why this is happening. It'll come through your progress chart. Hopefully that's helpful in giving you some insight on when you're going through a tough time. Somebody said your strengths and weaknesses with Chiron on your moon. How are you planning, preparing, prepping, and executing for eclipse season? So So Chiron's on my moon, and I have this eclipse coming on my moon, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of anxious about it. Because right now I'm in a solar year, so I'm in an 11th house annual perfection year. I'm 35 later this year. So I'm 34 right now. And I don't know, being in a solar year, having a solar eclipse right on top of my 7th house moon, and then having a Mercury Cazimi over my moon, makes me wonder, do I have a new teacher or a mentor coming in? Maybe. Is it going to provide me with an opportunity for a new business partner? Maybe. Am I going to have a total emotional meltdown because Mercury rules my 12th house? Maybe. I kind of intuitively think it might be about me getting pregnant, to be honest with you. And a lot of people always ask about that. People leave me comments and they're like, "Are you pregnant?" What? No. But I think that might happen. And to be honest with you, my moon's at 22, so it makes sense that I would do it when I'm older. I'm not trying to get pregnant. I know you're probably asking me that. No, I'm not. But I wonder if that's what's going to happen, and I keep telling my husband that. Chiron on my moon, mom stuff. I'm a big believer that not everybody is meant to be a parent, right? We've all seen the parents that made the decision to be a parent, and you can kind of tell that they love their kids and they're doing everything they can, but maybe that wasn't their path. And then there's also people who just, know that about themselves and they don't have kids. And I've been thinking about that a lot because I have had a really bad relationship with my mom. My mom married and divorced my father twice. She had 3 kids. And my mom left when I was 6 months old, and then she came back on and off, between ages of 6 months and 5 years of age. And then she came back, my parents got back together, they had my brother, they got remarried, had my sister, got divorced. And my mom and I have never really had a good relationship, and I think part of that is because I've always felt abandoned by her. And that she was not ever really reliable in my life. And I know it's not, even though we have parents, they're people and they have their own story and they have their own wounds. And I know a lot of that goes back to my mom's relationship with my grandma. And I think if there's any positive that came from that, it's that my grandma was really like my mom. My grandparents on my mom's side, they raised me. And they were my favorite people. I mean, I still have photos of them everywhere. If you go into my closet, my whole dressing area, I have photos of both of my grandparents. They were my parents. But I've been thinking about that a lot, about how the incoming Chiron eclipse, the eclipse is beginning of April, I think it's the 8th, and it's at 20, and it's at 19 degrees, so it's conjunct my 22-degree moon with Chiron. And it's bringing up a lot of if I'm gonna do that, I have to heal my mom stuff. I have to work through that. I have to remember that I don't have to be my mom, that if I do decide to be a parent, it's not following in the same footsteps. It's making a conscious decision to heal that stuff, to take really good care of my inner child, to do that work. And I anticipate maybe it's going to be working with some kind of a counselor to do that stuff, I think. And also, I've been having crazy migraines, but I think I've been telling you guys that. So I wonder if it's going to be bringing up more issues with that relating to my emotions and inflammation, because I kind of have a feeling that those 2 things are corresponding. So how am I planning and prepping? I'm lightening up my schedule a little bit. I'm not putting as much pressure on myself to meet deadlines, trying to get really good sleep, practicing a lot of good health routines and self-care, eating a lot of hot, spicy things and herbs and stuff to fight inflammation so I'm not having migraines. And also just dealing with the moods, because the North Node in Aries in conjunction to my moon makes me very spicy. And I've been feeling these fits that come up where I'm really quick to get into it with somebody, or I'm fit to be tied. There's this feeling that I'm I can't control it. I have a lot of Mars energy in general, so usually I'm pretty patient, which is a surprise. All my planets are in the 2nd house. So I'm a honorary Taurus in a way. But I think it's about better managing my anger and just what I do with that, and learning that I don't always just have to like hold it in, and trying to be better about working out. I have no excuses. The gym is literally 5 minutes from my house. So I'm hoping it's going to materialize as it being like a more frequent gym routine and kind of like healing that emotionally. Yeah, so that's that on tough times and moving through tough times. So we're going to move to the last bit. So I have 2 questions on my interests. One came from Jennifer. Jennifer says, what skills are you learning this year? You've been telling us how important it is to have a skill, something that we can barter, and something that you're curious about is what I'm learning. Okay, so 2 things is, one, the house that I moved into has these huge, like above ground basin vegetable gardens. Like they're ginormous. They're like 2 big, like canoe size. That's already got filtration and all kinds of stuff. So I have to go in there and weed it. I basically have gotten a ton of seeds. I'm going to be planting a medicinal herbal garden and also a vegetable garden. And I'm going to set up a bunch of other things where I can hopefully be doing some vertical growth on some stuff so I can be a little bit more sustainable and know where my food's coming from. I am also in the process of doing a lot of baking. So I'm really trying to make it a goal of mine this year to not eat any processed foods. To try to know where my food's coming from and like cook my own stuff. So I got a sourdough starter from a family who has had a starter for over 200 years, and it came from San Francisco. So I've been feeding that starter, making everything from my own bread to buns. I've been also making like my own pita. I'm experimenting with trying to make croutons and crackers and other things. Admittingly, I love bread. I know I shouldn't eat it, but I do love it. So I've been trying to be more sustainable with my cooking and my eating habits, knowing where that's coming from. I've also been trying to learn more about like vegetable gardening and rainwater conservation. So that's been coming up for me as well. I've gotten really big into, I guess you could say like herbalism. I mean, I always have been, but I've created like a whole herbal like medicine cabinet. So I've got all that ready to go. So it's like anytime anybody needs anything, I have it. And I keep laughing because my husband tells me like, oh, you're crazy. Like you have all this stuff that you don't need. You're never going to use it. But then he'll have like this weird ailment and he'll be like, oh, what do I do about this? Or like, I've got this like bump or this scratch or, you know, and I'm like, here you go. Here's some arnica or here's some charcoal because you're detoxing. Or here, take these mushrooms that will help you breathe better when you go running. So I've been getting really into natural herbal remedies. Now, in terms of actual skills, besides baking, sewing, you know, knowing how to fix stuff yourself, getting really into also learning more about sustainable wardrobes, making it a goal to try to wear like organic cotton or linen, leather, or just things that are going to be higher vibration, stuff that's not made out of plastics, and stuff that, you know, does take a swipe at your energy. So that's been some stuff that I've been doing. And recently I've been thinking also, maybe you guys have seen my dog, you might see him in a second, you know, taking my dog to like a local nursing home, to go and visit with the seniors and stuff, with people who may not have family that come to visit them. So I've been thinking about doing that. Obviously that's not a skill, but that's something that I've been thinking about doing that I can kind of contribute and kind of give back, because he's got a lot of love to give and he's a little ball of energy. So that's pretty much what I've been working on. I hope that answers your question. And then Crystal Green asked, how often do you use astrological charts for keeping track of what Bitcoin might be doing? Regularly. I probably look at the New York Stock Exchange chart and the Bitcoin chart, probably like twice a month, maybe. I mean, my husband and I are kind of at odds about this. He doesn't think so, but I seem to think that the tops for Bitcoin have been new moons. He doesn't think there's any correlation there, but whatever. But I look at it probably about twice a month, that in the New York Stock Exchange chart. I also just use regular astrology, you know, just like kind of like looking at, especially with Jupiter and Uranus coming into conjunction. I have questions about natural gas prices, why they're so crappy right now. I have questions about the future of certain materials and minerals, or things like copper, because that's Taurus, or silver, the price of silver. And like I said, I look at the New York Stock Exchange chart quite a bit, especially with some of the stuff that's been going on. You know, I think there's like some Jupiter-Uranus stuff that's coming in the 10th house of that particular chart. So that should be interesting to see. Maybe I'll do a video on that. I'm not like a financial advisor. That's not my specialty, guys. But it's definitely something that I like to talk about because there's so many wild things going on financially in the world right now, and I think we're going to see more of that in the spring. Okay, so that was all of my questions. It probably sounds like a lot of like heavy breathing and trying to get the right angle, so I apologize. I'm probably not the best multitasker. But thank you guys for asking me your questions. It's been fun getting a chance to kind of let you in a little bit more about me while I do my get ready with me stuff. If you guys have any questions or comments, do leave them below. I would love to hear your feedback on this. And thank you guys for hanging out with me today. We're going to be back on Thursday. We're going to be doing horoscopes for March of 2024. And I'm going to start working on some other videos for you. I've got a little bit of time here at the beginning of March, so I'm going to start getting some eclipse stuff ready for you as well. Maybe I'll do one of these videos in the future. I don't know. We'll see. This is kind of long and probably way too much information. But nevertheless, thank you guys for watching, for liking, commenting, sharing, and subscribing. Don't forget to click the bell button below. And if you guys have an interest in booking a one-on-one reading with me, click my links below. Go to beyondtheveiledtarot.com. You guys can find my availability. I'm booking in the month of June. I'm busy, but you can also catch me here on Friday nights at 5 o'clock p.m. Pacific time, 8 p.m. Eastern. That is when I'm doing my live readings. Consider donating or joining my memberships if you guys like my content, so I can keep being a full-time content creator. And now that you know that you're supporting me and my partner, it's not just me. So with that being said, I'll let you guys go. Enjoy the rest of your week. Thanks for watching. Take care.